to the Global Coalition to Address Synthetic Drug Threats, Sub-Working Group 3.3 for the month of January 2024. I can't believe it's already the new year. Addressing populations in contact with the criminal justice system, including alternatives to incarceration. I'm going to start with some administrative announcements. So there's a lot of them, so let's just get started. First, I want to discuss 3 sectors and our plans for upcoming months. The first sector being civil society engagement. On February 1st, we will have the Global Coalition Civil Society Forum hosted by the Vienna NGO Committee in collaboration with the New York NGO Committee. This will take place through 2 sessions, one from 9 to 11 a.m., the other from 4 to 6 p.m. Central European Time. Coalition governments are encouraged to attend these sessions and to hear from civil society organizations. Invitations will be sent to you all shortly to attend that session, and we will post a recording of the event on our website. Additionally, we are now starting our Global Coalition national dialogues between governments and civil society organizations. Yesterday, January 24th, the United States hosted its U.S. National Dialogue with Civil Society. It was hosted by the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. And it was an excellent opportunity for civil society to share its views and recommendations with us. It was a great event. It was recorded and will be posted on the Global Coalition website. If you are going to visit our website this morning, you will notice there is a new section for civil society so that we can start engaging with civil society more effectively. So the plan we discussed last month is outlined there. We also invite all of you colleagues and governments to host your own meetings with civil society organizations to discuss the Global Coalition, and civil society organizations discuss the Global Coalition and synthetic drug threats. Finally, the Vienna NGO Committee will also be collecting additional feedback and recommendations from civil society, and we'll make them available to you through our website over the coming months. So that's the first sector that I want to talk about. The second one involves university engagement. The ICU-DDR is the International Consortium of Universities for Drug Demand Reduction. This is an NGO that was established in 2016 with funding from INL and has 422 universities from around the world. That participate. This organization will convene universities. I'm sorry, somebody's not on mute. Can somebody please mute themselves?
We are working on that.
Thank you. The organization will convene universities to reflect on the challenges of synthetic drugs and provide us with research, policy ideas, and programming recommendations. The discussions will focus on all 3 working group themes, even though their focus traditionally is drug demand reduction, and the activities they will pursue are as follows. First, they will host a regional focus group virtual meetings during the months of February and March in 6 regions: Africa, Asia and Pacific, Europe, Latin America and Caribbean, Middle East, and then the US and Canada. The goal will be to develop recommendations and to prepare a report for you all for governments. Next, they will conduct 6 regional virtual meetings with universities and governments during the months of April to June. And this will be to incorporate the views from governments, have a dialogue, and then again, develop a report for coalition members. Finally, in June, they will conduct an inventory of university initiatives that can support the Global Coalition's work and document them on the coalition website. The third sector I want to discuss today is the private sector. And next month, we will present a plan of engagement to you all. We will be finalizing it this month and sharing it with our co-chairs, and then we'll be ready to present it at next month's sub-working group sessions. Now I want to provide some additional information about our website, which is developing nicely. We have a new communication feature that is going to be active soon, which will allow participants to share content similar to what you might find on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. It will go live in February, but will require for accounts to be activated from coalition participants. For you to be able to post something on the website, you will first need to have an account where you will log in order to be able to post under your name. In the coming weeks, you will receive an email that will invite you to create an account and to post content. So please be on the lookout for that email invitation and register once you receive it. It will be sent to the same email you used to register for the coalition. We welcome you to share your experiences, news, but most importantly, your recommendations that you and your country can offer for the coalition's work. It will be an important tool that we will be consulting regularly to be able to construct the recommendations. Here is a screenshot of what the wall might look like, which has, as you see, a text box where you can post content, you can add images, you can have utilize this wall to monitor what other people have posted and said, and of course, comment on those posts as well. This is in development, and we, as I said, we hope to have this up shortly. Finally, I want to talk about a new section to our website, which is forthcoming, which is called the Initiatives menu. It allows us to take the opportunity to showcase some of the work that we've been doing the past couple of months and where we are going from this point forward. This is an important time in the coalition's work, and it is important that we're all on the same page in terms of where we're going. Really think that this initiatives menu is going to be a one-stop shopping, almost like a college catalog where people can look and view all the programs and actions and policies that are going on. Between December and January, we invited international organizations to share with us what we are now calling initiatives. They could be programs, actions, and policies. We have received now over 120 initiatives from international organizations across all of the sub-working groups. Our team has been reviewing and preparing them to be posted onto our coalition website. As you can imagine, that's been a timely process. And this will take place during the months of January and February, where we post them onto the menu. What do these initiatives look like? Well, if you look at what I just posted on the screen, first we have the name of the initiative or the project, a brief description and background documentation, any accomplishments that have taken place to date, if it is an existing initiative, although in many cases with the Global Coalition, there are going to be new programs, program activities, and the steps that we follow to execute them, outcomes at the global and the national level, the names of the countries that are currently participating, and potentially most important, the point of contact should you be interested to add yourself or your country to these initiatives. During the month of February, we will continue posting, and then between February and March, we will begin inviting all of you colleagues to begin identifying initiatives of interest and to express interest in the international organizations' POCs on that menu link, the email addresses provided on each individual initiative. During March, many of you will be attending the UN Commission on Narcotics Drugs in Vienna. We look forward to seeing you all there, to opportunities for further engagement and discussion. Between April and July, we will begin the implementation phase of the Global Coalition initiatives. Be clear, this is not concluding them, but just the beginning, and they will continue for several years. Now I want to conclude today by discussing recommendations. We have reviewed all the topics from the monthly coalition meetings from November to February. We are creating a draft list of recommendations this month, which are being shared with co-chairs during the month of February and posted to the website in draft form. March 6th and 7th, there will be 3 working group meetings where sub-working group co-chairs will report to the working group co-chairs the progress that has been made over the past months, and also presenting these for discussion. And all of you can also comment and weigh in at that time. The recommendations will be posted on the website, and we will continue to welcome further input and recommendations from all of you through the mechanism I previously shared, i.e. the posting mechanism that will be uploaded to our website shortly. So I know that was a lot of administrative announcements. I apologize for taking so much time. At this point, I will turn it over to our co-chairs for today, Ivana Calderon and Justice Jeffrey Henderson. Over to you. Thank you all for your attention. Good to see you all.
Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you. Welcome back, colleagues, after the holiday break. just as a continuation of where Greg left off, this should be our second to last sub-working group session, where we will continue to share the best practices, models, and identify the intervention points. And by way of refresher, the goal of these sessions is to start determining the potential coalition deliverables, including the adoption of initiatives or identifying areas for action that can then become formal commitments during the meeting in March that Greg just mentioned. So we're a little bit behind time, so I'm going to turn it over right away to Carson Fox. Now, Carson Fox is, Carson Fox is the Chief Executive Officer, and he will tell us about AllRise. So let's get straight into Carson Fox's presentation. Over to you, Carson.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. It's an honor to speak to everyone today about drug treatment courts. They're often called drug courts. I represent AllRise. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of AllRise, and we're the largest organization in the world dealing with treatment courts. We've done work throughout the United States and in many countries throughout the world. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit this morning about AllRise and about what treatment courts offer. AllRise has 4 divisions, as you see here, working with veterans treatment courts, working with impaired drivers, working with adult and juvenile treatment courts, and working around the world. We work when we go into jurisdictions, and this is critical for the development of any treatment court, to work with the community and law enforcement, to work with the courts and the jails, and to also work on reentry and supervision components. What I want to do is frame this conversation around a young woman. I want you to picture a young woman, perhaps someone in your neighborhood, perhaps someone you're related to. In my community, for example, I don't know anyone who has not been touched by addiction, and more, I don't know anyone who has not been touched by synthetic drugs, and tragically, in many cases, by overdoses. So think of someone like that, and her name's Christina. I can tell you years ago, I worked in a treatment court, and we had many people like Christina who came through the program. Christina has been in active addiction for 10 years. She experienced trauma as a child. She's currently homeless and unemployed. She's been referred to treatment multiple times, but she has not been successful. And during the time that she has been using drugs, she has become more and more involved in criminal activity. And in fact, in Christina's case, she's never been arrested for a drug charge. She's been arrested, however, many times for charges that she says through her attorney to the court are driven by her drug use. Her most recent charge stems from she broke into her grandmother's house when she knew her grandmother was away and stole items from her grandmother to trade or sell for drugs. So she's facing burglary. And in many jurisdictions in the United States, she could receive 10 to 20 years for this charge. So we've got Christina. We're now going to talk about what happens in a treatment court, because we're hoping that Christina can be referred. So what does a treatment court offer? It's an alternative to incarceration. So in Christina's case, she could be facing 10 to 20 years. This is an alternative to incarceration. Treatment courts are for people in the justice system with serious substance use disorders who are referred by the court. Once these individuals come into the program, they're supervised and they're offered case management. They're drug tested regularly. In a treatment court, if you can see on the screen, all these different community interventions and partners of the court, every one of these partners is engaged in the process to some degree. In many jurisdictions, what we see is a team of individuals who come together and meet on a regular basis because individuals like Christina will not only go through treatment and case management and supervision and drug testing, but she will also report back in front of the judge on an ongoing basis, so the judge can ensure that Christina is progressing as she should. So to continue with Christina's story, she's found eligible for treatment court, even though she doesn't have a drug charge, keep in mind, and she has a long criminal record. What she does have is a serious drug addiction. She's gone through an assessment with qualified treatment providers, and she is found to have a serious drug addiction. And it's also found that if she's not offered an alternative that is intense like treatment court, she'll be more likely to come back into the system. And we know from her record, she's been back in the system several times. Her criminal record is several pages long at this point in time. Christina has a treatment plan developed for her by her treatment professionals. As I mentioned, she goes to court regularly to report in front of the judge. And if she continues to do better, the longer she's in court, those appearances will be fewer, but they still will be continuous until she graduates. While she's in the program, she'll undergo close supervision and that supervision will also involve case management. We will help her. If you'll recall, Christina's unemployed and she doesn't have a stable place to live. So she'll be guided to housing. She'll be assisted with finding a job. She'll be helped to reunite with her family. All the while, she'll be drug tested on a regular basis. She will be rewarded from the court, congratulated, for example, for doing well, for doing a great job. But she'll also be sanctioned if she doesn't comply. Sanctions can include an admonishment or a warning from the judge. They could also include community service. One thing about sanctions is in treatment court, if at all possible, we avoid jail as a sanction. So continuing the process, if she's in treatment court, as I mentioned, she's going to be in treatment. She's going to go through several phases of treatment in order to get better, and that we rely on the treatment professionals to tell the court what the best treatment is for her. Again, she'll be in regular court appearances. At the beginning, that could be every week. There'll be, again, those responses to behavior. And finally, what our hope for Christina is that she'll graduate from the program and she will also receive ongoing recovery support. And that's critical because during her time in the program, from the very beginning, the people in the program working on treatment and long-term recovery are building for her, with her, helping her build a structure to ensure long-term recovery. Graduation for Christina could mean a number of things, including having her charges dismissed. So Christina achieves housing. She finds a job. She gets family counseling. She gets financial services support and recovery support. And she graduates from the program. I can tell you myself, I saw in my program that I ran many years ago, I saw many, many people with a profile like Christina. In my role as the CEO of AllRise, I've seen tens of thousands and now even hundreds of thousands of individuals like Christina. So when we're talking about these types of programs that Christina's gone through and that she successfully completed, we get many questions. Well, do they really work? Well, we know from the multi-site drug court evaluation, which was funded through the United States Department of Justice, that treatment courts reduce crime by 58%. We also know from the same study that they greatly enhance treatment outcomes. They greatly enhance employment, education, housing, family reunification, and financial stability. There have also been studies through the Organization of American States that show similar outcomes. For an example, in Rio de Janeiro, a 12% reduction in recidivism as compared to the 80% of recidivism among individuals who were not referred. We also get questions about whether or not treatment courts save money. How much more money do they cost? Well, while treatment courts do cost more money on the front end, overall, and there have been many cost benefit analysis run, we know that treatment courts save approximately $6,000 for every individual served. If you include all the issues involving crime and victimization, you get over $11,000 per individual served. There have been many individual state and city separate cost benefit analysis run on treatment courts. And you can see on the slide examples here. These are separate studies run at separate times about treatment court programs. The state of California had a study which showed that for every participant from $7,000 to $12,000 was saved. In New York State, the totality of $254 million were saved. In Oregon, $11,000 saved per participant. Texas, this was actually Dallas, Texas, showed in their cost benefit study that $9 was saved for every dollar spent. And in Washington State, almost $6,800 saved per participant. We've also seen cost savings here. You can see the example in Rio de Janeiro that treatment courts were less expensive per participant than the alternative. And remember that in this same study in Rio de Janeiro, that recidivism rates were far lower for these participants. We've done international work at AllRise in these countries and more. I don't want to go through, we obviously don't have time to go through all of them. And each of these countries does not necessarily have a treatment court, but we have worked with them at one level or another. And here at AllRise, through our Center for Advancing Justice, we do a lot of work in this area using our people framework, which is here. I won't go through it. Basically, it starts with identifying partnerships at the local level, because courts in most jurisdictions, most cases, are there in the community. They're in the community. They're part of your community. And again, if you'll remember, these partners don't just include the courts. They include individuals who are providing treatment services, who are providing case management and supervision and all those different services. And then you engage those individuals collectively. You work on operations and policy and learning, and you ensure that they have some component, some ability to evaluate how they're doing as they go, so that they learn from their own mistakes and continue to improve their programs. I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward after all of the presentations, if there's time, to answer any questions you may have. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Greg. You were pretty much on cue. I was just about to intervene with the guillotine, but thank you. We're running a bit late, so we're going to now have Judge Pamela Williams. She's the Chief Justice of Nova Scotia, and she'll make a presentation on the wellness court model providing services pre and post release. Judge Williams. I know we think we have her. Are you hearing her? Okay, so if we don't have Judge Pamela Williams, then we can perhaps use the time where we could go to Jose Antonio Martin Pelez. Are you with us, Jose?
Hola, buenas tardes. Buenas tardes.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
All right, so Jose will use this session, and Jose, please share with us your presentation.
Buenas tardes. No sé si
Good afternoon. Can you see my screen?
We can see your screen. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Muy bien. Lo que quería en primer lugar.
What I wanted to say first is thank you for this opportunity to talk about our experience in drug management in Spain. Initially, what we wanted to show was three viewpoints that are now important for us regarding the strategic planning of care for a person with drug in prisons or alternative measures. Basically, it's intervention not only with the person deprived of her freedom or his freedom, but to work with the family, the environment, and maybe a larger environment so as to extend it, if possible, to the professionals within and outside the penitentiary system who work with drug-dependent persons. In this way, the judicial circuit of a person who is in a legal process, as we see, and this is similar to other countries, we'd have the alternative of either being in prison directly, or if the person has any problems or mental pathologies, could be sent to psychiatric penitentiary hospital. We have 2 in Spain. The later journey of the person would be to go to a social reinsertion center, and there are 3 types here. We have some independent and some which are under the penitentiary system, and then there are open systems. And there's also the alternative of establishing alternative measures, which is an important number of people. The focus and the care of programs in the social insertion programs, as well as the alternative measures, are in the community services of the national health system. In the penitentiary institution, we have primary care and provide the first level of care in drug dependence, coordinated with the community centers. And it is partially, as we'll see later, under the whole process. If we consider the 3 main actors and the key elements we should take advantage of when intervening in the process, let's first talk about the person deprived of their freedom, focusing on them and their family. It is felt that when a person is incarcerated, in itself it is a crisis with a rupture from their normal life, their everyday life, their addictions or pathologies, and that's a tremendous risk from those that are have to be treated because of the abstinence and the intoxication and the clinical care that they require, and also a very high level of overdoses. And this is where we see an important opportunity.
And it's at this window of opportunity that we should step in and intervene. We're talking about a very vulnerable population that doesn't usually have access to any other type of resource, and there's a high cost, community cost, in which they face situations in which they are more receptive to intervention, and the intervention could be more effective. Now let's focus on some of the programs that we have. Now, when drug addict patients, and when that person also has some type of a sickness or disease, they have a dual or a double pathology. Now, women's programs, there are fewer women in the overall prison or penitentiary population, but they do have more vulnerabilities, the reason for which they have different types of afflictions and addictions. Now, you could talk about infections such as sexually transmitted diseases, hepatitis C, tuberculosis, cardiovascular diseases, and this is the time to focus on their drug addiction. Addiction is one of the first things we have to deal with, because drug addicts that resort to our services don't do so voluntarily. It's usually court-ordered. And that's very different from the outside systems in which people seek help voluntarily. This means that we have to carry out a more intense educational aspect in the treatment we offer. Now, from the standpoint of professionals, and now we're going to get into the interventions proper. First, we have to prioritize, make sure that we have the best human resources and technical resources available to us. We also have to have the best possible information to ascertain what the current drug consumption situation is of the inmates for us to engage in strategic planning and come up with the best suited types of treatment. We have to monitor our own programs to understand what indicators we have to improve upon and where we're headed with our intervention. For this, we have a tool about which we're going to be speaking a bit later, which is a survey carried out every 5 years of the inmate population, in which we address health conditions and drug consumption. So training. We have new approaches. We focus on new substances, new behavioral patterns, harm reduction, a rational use of medication, or double pathologies. And we want to make sure with this rational use of medication that we don't over-medicate. And of course, we include a gender perspective. From the standpoint of coordinating the professional resources available to us, those who work within and outside the prison population, coordination plays a very important role in the healthcare offered in the community, both for gathering information and to ensure people have access to health services. This is an ongoing effort in Spain to ensure that healthcare offered in the prisons is something that is also works hand in hand with community health services. We have specific detox programs and withdrawal syndrome programs, suicide prevention programs, therapeutic communities, harm reduction or reducing overdose, and also programs to address mental health and double pathologies. Now, by way of information, let's take a look at the historical evolution of methadone treatments in our inmate treatment from 1996 to 2022, in which we have seen a progressive drop in methadone treatment. But if you look at the end of this curve, there has been a drop, but that drop has leveled off. Now, syringe exchange programs that we have carried out since 1997 in the inmate population, we thought that we would reach a final peak in the last couple of years, but what we've seen is that it has been kept up. Now, the aluminum foil distribution program, there has been a drop-off over time, and that gives us an overall idea when we see this over time, charted over time. But if you look at the three curves overlaid, you see that the methadone programs, that program has been added to the aluminum foil approach and the syringe exchange program, for which we don't yet see an end of in the different inmate populations. Other programs, detox programs, therapeutic modules, a double pathology. I would like to focus on the differentiated approach, the gender perspective for women in methadone treatment, and we see a higher rate of men than women in the prisons. I wanted to talk about the health survey carried out every 5 years, and we've been doing this for 20 years now. I'm going to give you some very significant data to give us an overview of this situation. On one hand, the overall health assessment that we have of the population places us in that we have an average or good level of overall health. 85%, now 20% of our inmates say that they're better off health-wise in prison than they are outside of prison. Now, when we compare that to the overall population, what we see is a high level of drug use in prison vis-a-vis the general population. You can see for cannabis, it's fold increase compared to general population. And you can see up on the screen the other drugs being consumed compared with the overall population outside of the prison. Drug use and age of onset, you can see it's where it stands for cannabis and ecstasy, but we see that gap between the two as being greater when talking about other types of drugs. 7 out of 10 of the inmates have taken drugs in some time in their life. 5 out of 10 in the last month, and in the last month in prison, 2 out of 10 have consumed some drug. What does that mean? It means when one comes into jail or prison, there is... I'm sorry to have to say this, but we would ask you to try to wrap up your presentation. So when someone comes into jail, there's a percentage drop-off of drug consumption compared to when they were outside. And so it's a progressive drop in the use of cannabis. Yet there still is drug use, and treatment programs are being stepped up. And going back to the interventions, we have made quite an effort in our interventions, offering support and hiring more professionals, training courses, most of which are conducted online, and campaigns also aimed at the inmates themselves, and the proper use of medication within the inmate population. We have been working with other organizations that collaborate with us, and to sum up what our main interventions are, it's a multidisciplinary work between treatment, these are the collaborating agencies, and doctors. And so this work is done with collaborators that work within and outside of jails or prisons, with healthcare services, and the national drug policy set at the national level. That's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose. So we're running a bit late. We are now going to have terms of the Dartmouth Wellness Court of Canada. She has 7 minutes in which to make her presentation. So, Chief Justice, over to you.
And Chief Justice, you are not you are muted. If you can please unmute and proceed. Thank you so much. And for the organizers, I'm trying to unmute Pam Williams in the meeting. It is not working. It's probably a bad internet connection. And I do not think that the speaker will be able to unmute. And once again, Judge Williams, if you could please unmute and proceed with your presentation. Thank you very much. I'm trying to unmute you, but it is not working. So it may be a bad internet connection for you. And Judge Williams has dropped off.
Perhaps we'll try.
Carson from INL, maybe we could have her record her presentation so we can post that to the website. I think that would be welcome.
Okay, so then we'll just go then to the live presentation of Giovanna Campello from the UN ODC, who will now make her presentation. And she has also 7 minutes.
Oh, very severe chair we are having today. Good morning, good evening, everybody.
Giovanna, my apologies. If you could speak a little bit closer to your device. Thank you so much.
My device is as close as it can be, but I'm trying to make it even closer. Is this any better?
That's a little bit better. Thank you so much.
Okay. In the meantime, also let me share my screen so that I can move the slides very fast.
And my apologies one more time. If you could move your camera a little bit lower because we don't see your face in the frame very clearly, that would be perfect.
That's okay. I mean, my face is not that important, but can you see the slides? That is actually a bit more important.
We can see the slides. Go ahead, please. We can see the slides.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to tell you a little bit about treatment of drug use disorders and associated mental health disorders in prison settings. As usual, I would like to start by looking at some data. I will not dwell too much because I think we are all very well acquainted with the fact that there are about 30 million people a year spending time in prison, and this population has been increasing, and particularly for women prisoners. And we all know how people who use drugs are overrepresented in many prison populations compared to the general population. And you can see some data on the slides. What I also want to highlight is how, and this on this slide, you can see similar data, particularly focusing on the European region. But what I would like also to bring to your attention very quickly is how much the mental health the prevalence of mental health disorders in prison setting is also much higher than in the general population. And on the slide, you have the rates for depression and anxiety, psychosis, and a history of traumatic brain injury, which is a piece of data that I found particularly striking, 60%. Also on this slide, you can see data about the likeliness to commit suicide and the fact that women in prisons are more likely to have had traumatic experiences in early childhood than incarcerated men. Here I'm giving you some data on fetal alcohol spectrum disorders and on ADHD. I'm not going into detail, but I just want to highlight how the population in prison setting is particularly vulnerable also from the mental health point of view, and is particularly vulnerable from the point of view of dual comorbidities. So here, and if you look in the center particularly, you have some data on comparing dual diagnosis of major depression and substance use disorder and non-affective psychosis and substance use disorders in the prison population and in the general population. This means that our services need to be extra strong, extra good quality to really support the health and the recovery of such a vulnerable population in a context that we all know is not really conducive to health, well-being, and recovery, because we all know how people in prison suffer from separation from supportive relationship, threats to personal identity, loss of autonomy, violence, and insecurity. So it's not that the environment necessarily helps us. Still, there is a lot that can be done, and in the next section, I'm showing to you some interventions that have been proven to be effective also in prison settings. And I will look at what can happen at intake, during incarceration, and upon release. So at intake, we really want to see a comprehensive health screening and assessment that includes drug use disorders and other mental health disorders, and therefore links the prisoner to possible health services. We also need to have people that are competent in addressing withdrawal and providing support if needed. And all of this, which is also on this slide, really points to the need for this assessment to be conducted by trained health professionals, which is often not the case in many prisons, but it's something that could really already improve the situation a lot. In terms of what can happen during incarceration, we have the guidance of the international standards for treatment of drug use disorder that list very clear interventions that have been found to be effective both in the community and in prison settings, around screening, which we talked already about, brief intervention and referral to treatment, but also evidence-based psychosocial interventions, pharmacological intervention, especially opioid agonist treatment if there are problems of opioid use disorders, overdose identification and management, and the treatment of co-occurring psychiatric and physical health conditions that we mentioned before. Here on this slide, I zero in particular about the psychosocial kind of treatment that has been found to be effective in prison, which needs to be formal and structured. It could include support groups, and therapeutic community have been found also to be more effective than other mental health treatments. So we have some good options in pharmacological and psychosocial treatment, as I show you here, to support the health and mental health of people in prison settings. What happens when people are released back into the community? Now, this is a very delicate time because we all know that a few weeks after release is one of the maybe most dangerous in the life of a person who uses drugs and person with a drug use disorder, because they might have lost their tolerance and therefore they are very, very vulnerable to overdose death. And therefore, that is why it's absolutely key to foresee a continuum of care, to start the provision of treatment in prison, maintain the engagement of treatment from the community, if there was any, and when we are releasing back into the community. And of course, let's remember that we are talking about people that are particularly vulnerable on a number of accounts, and we need to set them up for success. So we cannot release people in the community without housing, vocational training, family support, and educational support as appropriate, because the game would be stuck against them and relapse and reoffending would be all too often. By providing this package, we lower the probabilities of relapse and reoffending. Do intervention exist? Very quickly, there are some. We did a paper for the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, asking member states what kind of treatment they have in prison settings. And as you can see, we had some responses, especially from European countries that have been supported by our colleague of the Monitoring Center in Lisbon to look at this data. And I think that, I mean, of course, we need to always remember that there are few states that reported, and always they want to look good, right? But we did see a growing recognition of the need to diagnose comorbidities early, and the fact that most countries do carry out an assessment of mental health, drug use disorders on intake. What happens with this assessment, how good this assessment is, remains to be seen. But this was an encouraging sign, as was the fact that treatment has become more multidisciplinary and comprehensive, and that most countries strive to provide continuity of care. The good thing was also that we saw that prisons did offer a range of interventions, especially social support and vocational and educational support beyond just treatment. So there is some good news on which to build, but of course we did see a lot of challenges. We saw a lot of regional differences. We saw that some recommended interventions were very much less common, and it was really unclear whether all countries agreed that prison health should be treated as an inseparable component of public health. We didn't get that sense in many countries. So a lot to be done there. And I just want to really carry you through on the guidelines that can help us enter into this dialogue. And member states and policymakers that you are present here, if you want to enter into this dialogue with us, we are at your disposal. We have a lot of UNODC recommendations and guidance available, starting from a very old paper from coercion to cohesion, but especially, I mentioned already the standards. That is our reference point as to what works in treatment. And the good thing is that this has been endorsed by member states in numerous occasions as a useful tool. And we have an entire section there on promoting treatment through effective coordination between the criminal justice system and health and social services, including in prison. If you're looking for best practices, especially on the release side, this is a very good handbook that we produce with the World Health Organization. And then, of course, we have very important international instruments like the minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners, the Nelson Mandela rules, where member states have committed to provide equivalence of care in prison as in the community. And here you have the quotes. And with this, I want to almost leave you. Just let me just conclude by showing you on the screen, and I'm sure that I can make this available, our principles for action. I don't want to go through them one by one because they repeat what I have mentioned already in terms of best practice. What I want to tell you is that these were developed by a group of scientists that meets every year at the margin of the Commission, and 1 year looked particularly at the provision of treatment in criminal justice systems, including in prison settings. So we are very much committed at implementing this principle all around the world. We have just started, to be honest, because of the how iatrogenic and how negative for health the prison setting can be. We have been concentrating a lot on providing alternatives to conviction or punishment, and we are only starting now to be active in providing treatment for drug use disorders and associated mental health disorder in prison settings. But we had a wonderful experience recently last year in Ghana, which we can expand on a little bit about, and that we would like to replicate all around the world. So we are completely at your disposal to continue this dialogue here and in future. I'm done.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be so severe, but this is the times that they've given.
No problem. I'm done. Thank you.
But it has been a very thought-provoking and engaging presentation. So we have two more presentations, which are supposed to end in 2 minutes. I don't know if the organizers will give us more time. The first is from Magistrate Guzman from Mexico, and the second is from Veronica Paciello from Uruguay. Each is supposed to be 3 minutes, but we have 2 minutes left. So let's see, Mr. Guzman, Magistrate Guzman.
Buenos días, saludos desde Chihuahua, México. Primeramente,
Good morning. I greet you from Chihuahua. I'm very grateful for the invitation to be with you. Now, in the drug courts of Chihuahua, the judiciary of the state takes part. The Attorney General's Office, the Ombudsman's Office of Human Rights, oversight or supervisory agents, specialists of law enforcement, and a number of non-government organizations that work in a coordinated and joint way in choosing and approving the candidates. The selection process starts with a screening that's done in the courtroom, that is the adults and adolescents each have a special program. This is done jointly in carrying out the evaluation process and the choice, and to tailor the services offered each participant. It's a multidisciplinary approach that seeks to achieve the recovery and the re-entry into society of each participant, and of course it includes addiction treatment, and this is tailor-made for the individual and groups, as well as educational programs, training for work, cultural and sports activities, and leisure. We've been at this for 9 years now, and we have brought down the recidivism rate to 1.9%.
I'm very sorry for interrupting the speaker. We are having audio issues because you have not selected the correct channel. If you can please click the icon of the globe and select Spanish for your channel and continue. Thank you very much. Participants are having difficulty hearing you in Spanish. So once again, if you can select the Spanish channel, thank you very much. And please continue.
De acuerdo. ¿Reinicio o continúo en donde estaba?
Shall I continue or begin where I left off?
That will be the decision for the organizers.
Por favor, si puede continuar, pero hablando en el canal español.
Please continue, but speaking on the Spanish channel. I was saying that we have a holistic treatment. And to date, with almost 9 years of activities, we've been able to lower recidivism to 1.58%, with the understanding that the people who don't receive therapy, recidivism is 30%. We have 126 graduates. I'm at your disposal in case you have any doubts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Magistrate Guzman. If I could encourage you, if you have anything that you could perhaps post to share with us your country experience. We have to conclude now with the live presentation from Veronica Paciello, who will share with us the country experience of Uruguay.
Buenas tardes, buenos días, buenas noches, según el lugar donde estemos. En primer lugar, quería darles las gracias por la invitación a la señora Rubini y al señor Lomba. Para nosotros desde la Secretaría Nacional de Drogas de Uruguay es un placer poder participar de estas instancias que nos permiten.
I'd like to thank Elisa Rubini and Jabus for being able to share the experiences in our countries. In the first place, I'd like to stress that our country doesn't have justice courts, and it's the justice courts that determine the justice courts do not determine treatment for drugs, and they try to have people sent to different treatment centers to identify their use problem and to be sent to the most adequate treatments. There were two questions on which my intervention is based. First of all, the experiences on the use of the substances linked to the justice system and what the treatment is and what the centers are doing at a quality level. We're also working jointly with the National Bureau of Liberty, which depends on the Ministry of the Interior, and people in prisons, and also with the Ministry of Social Development, which is working with people who lead the system. This joint work that we carry out with them, our goal was to have specific treatments for the people who are leaving the jail system using different treatments inside and out. In these treatment networks, we have set up with specific methodologies with 6 modules. We have a proactive company to integrate them, and they're also accompanied by individual treatments during and after the group treatment. We've also tried to see how people are leaving the jail systems, linking them with public and private organizations so they can reduce the access gaps to treatment. And those who don't form part of the National Board of Drugs will work at public education and other entities. And the people should be able to access them not only with the holistic treatment that has to do with health, but also other activities that have been included, such as educational, cultural, and work. Answering the second question, and I know I have very little time, I understand that multi-sectorial cooperation between the justice system and the social system to be able to solve these disorders for drug use need effective policies that can be included in the holistic treatment. They include multidisciplinary groups which can approach the legal and health problems for people who have substance use, and also treat mental disorders for people who have been deprived of their freedom. And lastly, we have to base sensibilization and the training of professionals. And we somehow have to understand and provide better answers. Thank you very much.